It's wonderful when families treat their help so kindly, Evelyn Whitmore said, her polished smile sharp as a knife. First class for a nanny. Now that's generous. I hope they at least give you time off when you land. Looking after someone else's child can't be easy, especially when the parents are too busy or too important to do it themselves. If you've ever faced assumptions based on the color of your skin, wait until you see how Dr. Harper handles this one. Share this story and inspire someone today. Subscribe now for more powerful, uplifting stories of courage and resilience. Dr. Simone Harper's fingers tightened briefly around her daughter Amara's hand as they stepped into the first-class cabin. The 6-year-old clutched her stuffed giraffe, Spots, eyes wide with excitement. Simone's pulse remained steady, but her gaze caught the subtle glances of passengers, curious, questioning, some tinged with judgment. "Mom, the juice is too warm," Amara whispered, holding up the plastic cup from the flight attendant. Simone smiled gently. "Not too hot, baby. Take small sips." Her hands steadied the cup with practiced precision. Years of delicate pediatric surgeries had trained her to remain calm under pressure, and this subtle, simmering judgment wasn't much different. Across the aisle, Evelyn Whitmore and her family leaned back in their leather seats, whispering and smirking. Evelyn's husband shot a glance at Simone, her sister beside her nudging a teenager with a smirk. Their children giggled softly. Evelyn's voice floated over, smooth and cutting. "First class for a nanny. How rare." Amara tilted her head. "Mom, why is that lady laughing?" Simone knelt slightly, brushing a curl from Amara's face. "They don't know us, sweetheart. Sometimes people tell themselves stories before they know the truth." She refocused on tucking Spots securely under Amara's arm, keeping her daughter centered in her world. The cabin hums with the gentle sound of seatbelt signs and soft murmurs. A businessman passing by in 4C gave a classic double take at Simone. Evelyn's family whispered again, jokes laced with mockery. "Maybe she teaches the kids manners," one snickered. "Does she get overtime tips too?" another whispered. Simone didn't flinch. Her gaze remained calm, watching Amara adjust her blanket and fidget with her tablet. Every movement, tucking a curl behind Amara's ear, adjusting her seatbelt, smoothing the folds of her daughter's travel dress, was a quiet assertion. She was Amara's mother, and this was her seat, her space, her dignity. "Mom, can I have a jelly?" Amara asked, tugging at her backpack. "Of course, sweetie," Simone replied, reaching in. As she handed Amara the snack, Evelyn's daughter rolled her eyes dramatically, whispering to her brother. "She probably doesn't even know how to feed her own child," she said, barely concealing a laugh. Amara took a small bite, looking at her mother for reassurance. Simone offered a soft smile. "See? Nothing to worry about." Another whisper from Evelyn. "I wonder if she even has a driver. Imagine flying first class without one." The words landed in the cabin like a cold draft. Simone's lips curved into a measured smile. She straightened, adjusting Amara's blanket over her lap. "Mom, can you help me with my straw?" Amara asked, holding up her juice. "Of course, baby." Simone reattached the straw, her hands calm and steady, as if performing a miniature procedure. Evelyn's family continued their low hum of laughter and muttered jokes, attracting glances from a few passengers who frowned at the unkindness. The young girl a few rows back peeked from behind her book, eyes wide, curious. Simone noticed the look, but didn't break her focus from Amara. A flight attendant, Sarah, moved down the aisle with a drink cart, eyeing the situation subtly. She offered a polite nod toward Simone, a silent show of support, before continuing. "Mom, my straw slipped again," Amara whispered. "I've got it, sweetheart." Simone leaned down, carefully tucking the juice back into place, and smoothed Amara's blanket again. Every motion was intentional, signaling the bond between mother and child. Across the aisle, Evelyn nudged her husband, smirking. "Maybe she should ask for a raise from her employers for first-class travel," she whispered, loud enough for a nearby passenger to glance over. Her sister laughed softly, and her children giggled. Simone's jaw flexed slightly, but she said nothing. Instead, she focused on Amara's tablet, navigating the puzzle game she loved. The cabin seemed smaller now, filled with their presence and the subtle, constant hum of judgment. Amara shifted in her seat. "Mom, I think Spots wants to sit by the window," she whispered. Simone chuckled quietly. "Of course, baby. Let's give him a view." She adjusted the stuffed giraffe so it perched safely on the window ledge. Evelyn's family didn't pause, their laughter continuing in whispers. "I hope they at least teach her some manners," one of the teenagers said. "Flying first class must spoil her." Simone took a deep breath. These words weren't about Amara. They were about assumptions, about perceptions of her, of black women in spaces where wealth, power, and privilege dominate. She had encountered it in restaurants, schools, hospitals, everywhere, but never had it been so brazenly exposed in such close quarters. "Mom," Amara asked softly, pointing at the seatbelt sign, "why is everyone looking at us?" "They're noticing us, baby," Simone said gently. "But that's okay. You're safe. You're mine. And that's what matters." Evelyn leaned forward slightly, smiling with a condescension only she could manage. "Do you get to choose what games she plays?" she asked mockingly. "Or does your boss decide?" Simone didn't respond immediately. Instead, she leaned down, smoothing Amara's hair. Her patience was deliberate, every second measured. "Yes, sweetheart, you choose," she said, louder this time, projecting authority and calm. "This is your flight, too." Amara smiled softly, reassured. Simone met Evelyn's gaze briefly, polite, controlled, unyielding. Evelyn's lips twitched, a subtle sign that her joke hadn't landed as intended. Another passenger, an older woman in 2B, shifted in her seat to observe, nodding slightly in approval at Simone's calm demeanor. A young businessman removed his earbuds, eyes fixed on the unfolding scene, perhaps recognizing the quiet strength of a mother asserting her authority against bias. Amara yawned, her excitement giving way to fatigue. Simone adjusted the blanket around her, tucking Spots close. "Sleep now, baby. Mommy's right here." Evelyn's children whispered again, laughing at a joke none of the passengers around them appreciated. "Maybe she should learn some table manners before claiming first class," one said. Simone's calm mask never faltered. She reached into her bag and pulled out Amara's favorite storybook. "Want me to read?" she asked softly. Amara nodded, eyes heavy. "Once upon a time," Simone began, her voice warm, commanding, soothing. "There was a little girl who was brave, clever, and kind. Just like you, Amara." Amara smiled in her sleep, clutching Spots. The cabin settled into a quiet rhythm, Simone reading softly, her tone steady, deliberate. Evelyn's laughter faltered for a moment as other passengers watched the scene. A mother reading to her child, protective, tender, entirely present. "Mom, I'm thirsty," Amara mumbled sleepily, stirring. "I've got you, baby," Simone said, handing her the juice, careful not to spill a drop. Evelyn's husband leaned slightly, whispering something to his sister. They shared a glance, uncomfortable now in the presence of the mother-daughter bond they had sought to belittle. Their children looked confused at the lack of reaction. Simone continued, uninterrupted, adjusting Amara's blanket, smoothing her hair, reading in that calm, rhythmic voice. Each motion, each word, a quiet lesson in patience, authority, and dignity. The first-class cabin had transformed. What began as a space of judgment and mockery had shifted. Even a few passengers who had been absorbed in their work now glanced over, eyes thoughtful, appreciating the quiet authority of a mother asserting her presence. Amara, fully relaxed, drifted off to sleep in her mother's arms. Simone rested her hand lightly on her daughter, her gaze sweeping the cabin one final time before tucking the storybook into her bag. Evelyn and her family sat frozen, realizing the humor of their assumptions had not landed. Simone leaned back in her seat, exhaling slowly. Today she had asserted the truth. She was Amara's mother, fully present, fully capable, fully deserving of her space. The cabin seemed lighter somehow, filled with the quiet acknowledgement of dignity in action. This was the first step, The flight had just begun. The plane had leveled, the seatbelt signs flicked off, and the gentle hum of cruising altitude filled the cabin. Dr. Simone Harper kept one hand on Amara's lap, the other resting lightly on Spots, her daughter's stuffed giraffe, as the quiet morning tension continued. Evelyn Whitmore reclined slightly, a smug smile plastered on her face. Her sister, Margaret, leaned over with her teenage son and daughter, whispering conspiratorially while occasionally letting a soft, mocking giggle escape. Evelyn's eldest, a boy barely 10, smirked at Amara. "Hey, nanny girl," he whispered loudly enough for Amara to hear. "Do you get to pick your own snacks or just whatever your boss tells you?" Simone's eyes flicked up, calm, measured. Amara looked confused, clutching Spots closer. "Mom, what did he say?" "It's nothing, baby. Just some people who don't know us," Simone replied softly, keeping her voice warm. "They're just talking to themselves." Evelyn's voice, smooth and mocking, carried clearly. "I can't imagine a nanny getting first-class seats. My gosh, that's extravagant. You must have a very generous employer." Her laugh had the perfect mix of condescension and charm. "Or maybe she's really special," Margaret's daughter whispered to her brother, barely suppressing laughter. "She probably teaches a little one how to fold napkins properly," she snickered. "I bet she can even sing lullabies." Amara's small hand tightened around Simone's arm. "Mom, why are they laughing at me?" Simone leaned down, brushing a curl back from Amara's forehead. "Because they don't know any better." "But we do. We know the truth, right?" Amara nodded, eyes wide. Evelyn's family continued whispering jokes that felt louder than they were. "Maybe she even carries a little first aid kit," one whispered. "Oh wait, she's probably trained in CPR for toddlers. How useful for a nanny." Evelyn's laughter bubbled up, rich and piercing. Simone's gaze didn't waver. Calm, controlled. Every movement, adjusting Amara's blanket, helping her sip juice, was a statement. Mother, protector, professional. "Mom," Amara whispered, tugging at her hair. "My straw fell in the juice." Simone leaned in, correcting it. "There we go, baby. All set. You're okay." A teenager from Evelyn's family laughed outright. "Did you see her? She's fussing over every little thing. Must be exhausting to manage someone else's child." Simone's lips curved into a soft, polite smile, but her voice, when she spoke, carried the quiet authority of someone used to handling disrespect. "Sweetheart, we're doing just fine. Right, Amara?" Amara gave a small nod, feeling her mother's calm presence like armor. Evelyn wasn't done. "You know, we once had a nanny who flew with us. She spilled juice all over the seats. Imagine this one doing the same." She let the laughter linger, exaggerated, as if Simone's presence were absurd. Simone's hand rested briefly over Amara's small fingers. "Baby, see? Some people say things that aren't true, but we know better." Across the aisle, a few passengers were observing quietly. A woman in her 40s, clearly a frequent flyer, gave a slight nod of approval. Another man, typing on his laptop, paused and looked over, curious. Evelyn's teenage daughter leaned forward. "Do you think she even gets the paycheck? Or is this all for love of the child?" she whispered, eyes glinting with mischief. Simone's gaze swept over them all, steady, unwavering. "Every job deserves respect," she said softly, "even the ones people underestimate. But my daughter, she deserves to know she is loved, protected, and understood. That's all that matters here." Margaret snorted. "She talks like a boss, but nanny? Come on, who dresses like that for childcare?" Simone smiled gently, adjusting Amara's travel blanket once more. She noticed Amara's small frown at the continuous mocking. "Mom, they're still laughing," Amara whispered. "I know, baby," Simone replied. "We'll show them in time that what we are is not up for their judgment." A soft cough from the flight attendant, Sarah, broke the tension momentarily. She passed by, offering a supportive glance to Simone, a silent ally recognizing the unspoken battle of dignity in a first-class cabin. Amara's small voice tugged her attention. Mom, can you read me a story? Of course, baby, Simone replied. She pulled the storybook from her bag, holding it so Amara could see the cover. Let's pick one we both love. Evelyn's youngest, the boy of 7, laughed. Look, the nanny's reading to her kid. How cute. He elbowed his sister, who giggled in response. Simone didn't react beyond a small, composed smile. Instead, she began to read, her voice low but steady, each word precise, intentional. Amara's eyes lit up, and the mockery from Evelyn's family was temporarily drowned out by the calm cadence of storytelling. The teenage boy whispered again. Do you think she even knows how to feed her own kid? Simone paused, fingers lightly resting on the book. Her voice, now carrying the quiet weight of authority, rose just enough to carry across the aisle. Amara is well-fed, loved, and cared for, and she will always be, no matter what assumptions others make. The cabin shifted. A few passengers glanced over, noticing the tension and the quiet dignity with which Simone handled it. Evelyn's smirk faltered slightly. Amara yawned, heavy-lidded. Simone tucked her head with a gentle hand, smoothing down the curls. Time for a little rest, baby. Mommy's right here. Evelyn's sister whispered, loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. She must be a professional. But a nanny? Really? Simone took a deliberate breath, her fingers brushing Amara's cheek lightly. We all have work we're proud of, she said softly. Mine is taking care of my daughter. That's a full-time, lifelong job, and I take it seriously. Across the aisle, the cabin now felt different. The snickers had faded slightly, replaced with quiet observation. The young girl from a few rows back peeked from behind her book, eyes wide in admiration. Evelyn's children exchanged confused glances. Their parents nudged them subtly, unsure how to respond. Evelyn's forced smile faltered. Simone resumed reading the story, voice calm, deliberate. Amara leaned against her, clutching spots. The small interruptions continued, Amara asking for juice, adjusting the blanket. But Simone handled each one with measured precision, each gesture a silent assertion of her authority, care, and professionalism. Margaret whispered to her sister, She's really something. Evelyn's glare was subtle but real, her smugness replaced by an edge of unease. Amara's voice, drowsy, asked again, Mom, why are they still looking at us? They're learning, baby, Simone replied, brushing a curl from Amara's forehead. Sometimes people need to see the truth in front of them. A quiet murmur ran through the cabin. Even passengers who hadn't paid attention before were now listening, observing, seeing the mother-daughter bond that had been so relentlessly mocked. The laughter of Evelyn's family was now punctuated with unease. The children whispered to each other, unsure how to react. Simone's calm composure and unwavering attention to Amara had shifted the balance. Amara, finally comfortable and safe, drifted into sleep, tucked securely against her mother. Simone closed the book gently, her hand resting lightly on her daughter. Evelyn's voice broke the tension abruptly, sharper this time. I suppose even a nanny can handle first-class travel, huh? Simone met her gaze directly, calm but firm. I'm not a nanny, she said, voice low but deliberate. I'm Amara's mother, and I've earned my place here, every bit of it. Just like anyone else. The cabin went quiet. A few passengers exchanged glances, acknowledging the authority and dignity in Simone's words. Even the flight attendant, Sarah, gave a subtle nod of approval. Evelyn's smirk was gone. Margaret's whisper died mid-sentence. The children fidgeted, the mockery replaced by confusion and awareness. Simone adjusted Amara's blanket one final time, smoothing the curls over her forehead. Let's get comfortable, baby. We have a long flight ahead, and I want you safe, happy, and cared for. The cabin settled into a new rhythm. The laughter had faded. Mockery had dissolved. What remained was quiet observation, subtle reflection, and the undeniable presence of a mother asserting her dignity in the face of assumptions. The cabin had settled into a deceptive calm. Amara fidgeted with her tablet, engrossed in a puzzle game, while Simone adjusted the blanket around her shoulders. That's when the first subtle shift caught Simone's eye. Evelyn, the woman who had started the morning with her condescending nanny comment, had returned. But this time she wasn't alone. Behind her came her husband, her sisters, and even her children, each moving with the casual arrogance of entitlement. They stopped just short of Amara's seat, forming a semicircle that felt impossibly tight, their collective presence a silent assertion of power. Evelyn leaned in first, her voice sharp, dripping with false sweetness. "Sweetie, I think it's time someone told you how things work here," she said as if Amara were a misbehaving schoolgirl. "You see, first class isn't really for people like you. Isn't that right, everyone?" Her sisters chimed in immediately, laughter weaving through their words. "I mean, honestly," one said, tilting her head, "how do they even let nannies sit here? Shouldn't there be rules?" The children, sensing approval, mimicked the mocking tone, their small voices carrying unnervingly through the aisle. "Watch out! She might mess up the whole flight," one giggled, pointing at Amara, who clutched her stuffed giraffe tighter. Simone's jaw tightened. She could feel the eyes of passengers on them, some shocked, some trying not to stare, others quietly sympathetic but hesitant. Even the crew paused, offering polite smiles but no intervention, allowing the family's harassment to escalate. Evelyn's husband leaned slightly over, blocking the aisle. "Honestly, I've never seen someone like her here," he said, the words heavy with judgment. "Do the airline staff even check? Or is first class now just a playground for anyone?" Simone stood slowly, positioning herself slightly between Amara and the semicircle of intimidation. Her hand rested lightly on her daughter's shoulder, a subtle shield. She spoke, voice calm, but carrying the kind of authority that silenced the ambient murmurs. "You are standing in my child's space," Simone said, eyes meeting each member of the group, one by one. "I am her mother. Your words are unnecessary, and your assumptions are rooted in ignorance. You will not speak to her, or about her, in this manner." Evelyn snorted, a forced laugh that carried no humor. "Oh, come now. We're just pointing out the obvious. No harm meant. You don't have to take it personally." Simone shook her head slightly, each movement deliberate. "No, your words are harmful. They carry assumptions based on the color of my skin, not my actions or my child's. You are creating a hostile environment around an innocent 6-year-old. A young couple several rows back exchanged nervous glances, and one woman whispered something to her husband, but none of the passengers dared intervene directly. The crew shifted uneasily, their hands hovering over carts, unwilling to take a stand against Evelyn's family. Evelyn's sisters leaned closer, voices rising. "Well, someone's sensitive. She's just a little girl. Your kid seems nice enough. But really, don't you think you're overreacting?" Simone's gaze didn't waver. "I am not overreacting. This is not about sensitivity. It is about respect. You would never speak to a child or parent like this if it were anyone else, because you would be confronted immediately. But because of assumptions about who we are, you feel entitled to mock and intimidate. That stops now." The tension in the cabin was palpable. Amara, sensing the escalation, clutched her mother's arm, eyes wide but trusting. Simone gave her a small, reassuring nod, anchoring her with presence. One of Evelyn's children whispered something cruel about Amara's hair. Evelyn laughed, nodding. Simone stepped closer, her voice rising just enough to carry, calm but immovable. "You will not teach a child that she is inferior based on her skin or appearance. Shame on you for thinking that is acceptable. Now step back." There was silence for a brief moment, tense, fragile. Then Evelyn's husband shifted uncomfortably, muttering about misunderstandings, while one of her sisters attempted to redirect the humiliation. But the energy had shifted. The cabin had collectively drawn in its breath, watching the scene unfold as Simone remained unshaken, her presence filling the space. Simone finally crouched slightly, looking Amara in the eyes. "You see this? This is what strength looks like. Not retaliation, not yelling, but standing firm for what is right. People may try to diminish you, mock you, but your worth is never defined by their ignorance. Amara's grip on her mother's hand loosened slightly, a tentative smile forming. The other passengers, sensing the authority and righteousness of Simone's stance, began nodding subtly, some offering quiet murmurs of approval. Evelyn's family lingered a moment longer, unsure, defensive, and humiliated themselves by the public clarity of Simone's words. The confrontation had reached its peak, loud, clear, unflinching, and yet Simone had not raised her voice in anger, only in command and dignity. The cabin settled again, but the tension lingered in the air, heavy and undeniable. Simone adjusted Amara's blanket, ruffling her hair gently, and whispered, "You were perfect." Amara's sleepy, proud smile in return was the only acknowledgement she needed. Passengers who had been silently observing now seemed subtly more aligned with Simone, some offering tentative smiles, others nodding in quiet solidarity. The crew, sensing the shift, resumed their duties. No longer passive observers, but quietly respectful of the authority Simone had commanded without raising her voice. This confrontation had left no doubt. Simone was not just Amara's mother. She was a force of dignity, authority, and unwavering principle. And as the plane continued its flight, the cabin now held an unspoken awareness of the power of presence, of standing tall in the face of entitlement and prejudice. The cabin had gone still. Evelyn and her family had clustered near the aisle, forming a wall of glaring entitlement. Her sister's husband leaned against the bulkhead, arms crossed, while Evelyn's teenage daughter smirked, whispering loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. "Looks like the airline let a black nanny sit in first class. Wonder who gave her the upgrade." Evelyn stepped forward, voice crisp, polished, but sharp as glass. "Excuse me," she said, directing herself at the flight attendant while her eyes never left Simone. "How is it that a nanny, a black nanny, is allowed to sit here? This is first class. This is our space. Surely you understand your responsibilities?" The crew exchanged uneasy glances. One of the attendants, a young man with a pressed Navy uniform, shifted, clearing his throat. Ma'am, she has a ticket." "Don't give me excuses," Evelyn snapped, cutting him off. "I'm asking why she's here. Did the airline forget the rules? This isn't fair to paying passengers. A nanny does not belong in this cabin." Her sister's husband leaned closer, lowering his voice, but still loud enough for others to hear. "Honestly, it's uncomfortable. Why is the black nanny allowed to sit here? Move her to the back immediately. Make her leave." Simone felt every eye in the cabin brush against her. The tension was palpable, thick and suffocating. She looked down at Amara, her daughter, who had been quietly fidgeting with her tablet, sensing the heaviness without fully understanding it. The young flight attendant approached cautiously, hands folded, voice forced with neutrality. "Ma'am, the family has raised concerns about your seat. They've requested." Simone held up a hand, calm but resolute. "I have a confirmed first-class ticket for myself and my daughter. I am allowed to sit here." Evelyn's lips curled into a tight, incredulous smile. "Allowed? By who? Do you think paying passengers should just tolerate a black nanny in first class? I hope you understand. This is inappropriate." The words cut sharper than any whisper, more pointed than any glance. Simone's jaw tightened, but she did not move. Her daughter's small hand squeezed hers, a silent reminder of why she was here. She would not be intimidated. Another family member, Evelyn's teenage son, stepped forward, gesturing at Simone. "Honestly, how did they even let her on the plane in first class? A black nanny? Shouldn't the airline have some oversight?" His laugh was hollow, meant to amuse the group, but it only made the hostility feel louder. Simone felt her pulse steady. She didn't respond. Not yet. Instead, she let her eyes meet those of the young flight attendant, who shifted awkwardly, torn between policy and the family's relentless pressure. The cabin had grown tense, passengers leaning subtly to witness the unfolding spectacle. Evelyn leaned even closer to the crew, her voice silky but venomous. This is absurd. A nanny should not be occupying a first-class seat. I am asking you, insisting that she be moved immediately. How dare the airline allow a black nanny in this cabin? The flight attendant swallowed, his voice barely hiding discomfort. Ma'am, as I said, she has the ticket. We, Evelyn's glare silenced him. No excuses. Move her. Now. How dare you permit this? First class is for paying passengers, not for nannies. Not for people like her. Simone could feel the anger radiating from the family, directed through the crew as if they were mere tools in their orchestrated humiliation. Every word the crew uttered sounded like a judgment, a veiled push, a request for her to vacate. Would you, consider moving? The attendant asked, voice hesitant, almost pleading. Simone shook her head gently. No, I am seated here legally and appropriately. My daughter and I belong in first class, just like any other passenger. The family erupted with indignation. Evelyn's voice pierced the cabin. You hear that? The black nanny refuses to leave. This is outrageous. We are not going to sit quietly while she occupies what is not hers. Her sister chimed in, louder, pointing at Simone. She shouldn't even be allowed near the food service or drinks. This is first class, not a place for nannies to relax while real passengers sit. The crew hovered uncomfortably, clearly reluctant to escalate, yet powerless under the family's pressure. Some passengers shifted, murmuring in disbelief at the overt audacity. Simone's hands rested on Amara's small ones, her calm anchor amid the storm. She did not respond to the insults, did not flinch under the family's glare, did not argue with the crew. Her presence alone became a statement. Evelyn turned to the rest of the cabin, raising her voice. See this? This is exactly why the airline needs stricter rules. A nanny doesn't belong here, and yet they let her in. Who knows what kind of influence she might have over children around her? One of Evelyn's nieces added, smirking. I bet she's never even flown first class before. Look at her. She's faking it, pretending she belongs. The words hung like smoke in the cabin. Simone tightened her grip on Amara, who now looked up, sensing her mother's quiet strength. A few passengers attempted to intervene quietly, but the flight attendants, caught between family pressure and protocol, remained awkwardly passive. The confrontation had become a clear display of entitlement and racial bias, with the family weaponizing the crew against Simone. Simone exhaled slowly, her voice calm but firm when she finally addressed Evelyn through the attendant's hesitant introduction. I am Dr. Simone Carter, a pediatric surgeon. My daughter and I have every right to be in first class. I am not a nanny, and I will not move. Evelyn froze, her eyes widening, but her family immediately murmured amongst themselves, still intent on forcing Simone out. This is unacceptable, Evelyn said, louder than before, and the airline should enforce proper seating. She should be moved immediately. The cabin remained silent, other passengers watching the battle unfold. Simone's calm dignity against Evelyn's loud entitlement, the crew awkwardly standing in the middle, and the family's orchestrated, hostile crowd pressing in. It was clear. The humiliation was deliberate, racial, and collective. The family leveraging social power and privilege to attempt to push a black mother from her rightful space. Simone remained seated, her back straight, hands gently resting over Amara's small ones. The hostility pressed around them like a physical wall, but she refused to retreat. She looked at the crew, her eyes calm but pointed, silently communicating. This is my seat, my space, my child's space, and you will not enforce someone else's prejudice. Evelyn's family wasn't done. Her sister leaned forward, tone dripping with faux concern. We just want what's right. Surely the airline has rules that nannies are not allowed to sit in first class. Evelyn's teenage daughter smirked, pointing subtly at Amara. Maybe the nanny should go back and play with her doll. This is too much for her to handle. Simone's lips curved into the faintest, measured smile, not mocking, not sarcastic, but a quiet acknowledgement of their ignorance. She adjusted Amara's blanket, gently tucking it around her daughter, as if to shield her from the venom in the cabin. The flight attendants hovered, their discomfort evident. One approached again, the words faltering, as if pre-chewed apologies would somehow satisfy the family. Dr. Carter, they are insisting. Simone held up her hand. Stop. I am seated here legally and I am not moving. My daughter and I have the right to first-class accommodations, same as anyone else. Evelyn's voice rose, cutting through the cabin. How can you sit there while my family pays for this flight? This is our space. A black nanny, no, anyone in that role does not belong here. Move her. Simone's gaze did not waver. I am not a nanny. I am a mother and a pediatric surgeon. I work every day to help children, to save lives. My daughter and I belong in this cabin, and I will not be intimidated by your prejudice. Her words rang clear, precise, unshakable. For a moment, the cabin seemed to hold its breath. Even the flight attendants, previously hesitant, paused in recognition of her authority and composure. Evelyn's sister, sensing the momentum slipping, stepped closer, trying to rally the family's power. This is unacceptable. She is undermining us in front of everyone. We demand action. How dare the crew allow a black nanny in first class? This is embarrassing. No, passengers shifted uneasily, some glancing at each other in disbelief. A businessman a few rows away leaned back, murmuring to his wife, I can't believe this is happening. Openly like that. Simone finally leaned slightly forward, her voice soft but carrying the weight of unshakable authority. This is not embarrassing. What is embarrassing is the audacity to assume my worth, my identity, or my place based on my skin color. I am here because I earned it, and because my daughter deserves a safe and comfortable journey. I will not let you erase that with your assumptions. Amara stirred, blinking up at her mother. Mom, Simone smiled gently, brushing her daughter's curls. It's okay, baby. We're okay. Evelyn's daughter snickered under her breath, loud enough for the cabin to hear. Well, the nanny sure talks fancy. Bet she's never flown first class before. Simone's eyes narrowed ever so slightly. Her hand, steady and unflinching, rested over Amara's. I have flown many times for conferences, for my work, and I will continue to fly wherever I am permitted. This is my seat. This is my space, and your attempts to humiliate me will not succeed. The tension in the cabin was palpable. The family's laughter faltered as passengers began to pay attention. Some quietly nodded at Simone. Others exchanged murmurs of admiration. Evelyn's voice rose again, the last thread of her control fraying. We pay for first class. You are not allowed here. You... Before she could finish, Simone's calm, authoritative tone cut through the room like a scalpel. I am not here to debate entitlement. I am here to protect my daughter and myself. Your money does not grant you the right to discriminate, and your actions speak more about you than about me. A hush fell. Even the youngest child in Evelyn's family, a boy of 7, looked uncertain, sensing the shift. The flight attendants no longer hovered, caught between policy and the unmistakable moral clarity radiating from Simone. Then almost imperceptibly, a ripple of acknowledgement spread among the other passengers. One of the mothers a few rows ahead whispered to her seatmate, Finally, someone standing up. Simone took a slow breath and leaned back, hands still resting gently on Amara's. She had held the line. She had refused to be removed, refused to be silenced, refused to let prejudice dictate her place. And as the family's verbal onslaught began to falter, she knew the next moment, when it would matter most, was coming. The cabin remained tense. Evelyn's family had grown silent, momentarily stunned by Simone's calm authority. Her words had sliced through the noise, leaving their entitlement exposed. But just as the hostility seemed to stall, a sharp cry pierced the air. Evelyn's youngest child, a boy no older than 5, had grabbed at his throat, gagging and coughing violently. Panic flared instantly in the family's faces. Evelyn froze, her polished composure crumbling. Help him! Somebody! He's choking! Chaos erupted. The flight attendants shouted, flustered and unsure of the proper procedure, while passengers gasped and craned their necks to see what was happening. Simone's instincts kicked in immediately. Evelyn's mother-in-law rushed forward, flapping her hands in panic. "Grab him! Hold him up! Somebody do something!" Evelyn fumbled, her fingers clutching the boy's arms awkwardly, trying to shake him or pat his back, but only making him choke harder. Her sister's husband shouted, "He's turning red! Why isn't he breathing? Someone do something!" One of the older children tried to intervene but tripped over a tray table, sending juice splashing across the aisle. The cacophony of shouts, flailing hands, and terrified cries only worsened the situation. The flight attendants hovered helplessly, unsure whether to pull the child forward or call for the emergency protocol. Simone's eyes locked on the struggling boy. Her body reacted before her mind fully processed the scene. She moved swiftly, weaving past the panicking family. "Step back! Give him space!" she commanded, her voice cutting through the chaos. Evelyn and her relatives froze for a fraction of a second, too stunned to argue. Their attempts at helping halted mid-motion. For a moment, the cabin seemed to hold its breath. The boy's little hands clawed at his throat, his face pale and slick with tears and panic, while his tiny legs kicked helplessly. The usual noise of the plane, the hum of engines, the clatter of service carts, faded into the background, leaving only the boy's desperate gasps and the harsh shouts of the frantic family. Simone dropped to her knees beside the boy. She assessed him instantly, small hands at his throat, tears streaming, panicked eyes wide. "He's choking. He can't breathe fully," she muttered under her breath, though loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. She positioned herself behind him, curling her arms around his small torso. "I'm going to help you, okay? You're safe," she said. Then without hesitation, she delivered 5 precise back blows between his shoulder blades, each one firm and controlled. The boy gagged and coughed, spitting out a small piece of candy that had lodged in his airway. He gasped, tears still running, but his breathing began to normalize. Simone quickly followed up with abdominal thrusts, careful and measured, tailored to his small size, until she was certain the airway was clear. Finally, she lifted him into her lap, cradling him gently as he coughed a few more times, then breathed freely. "There we go. That's it. You're okay now," she whispered, smoothing his hair. His panic ebbed, replaced by relief, while the cabin collectively exhaled in astonishment. Evelyn and her family stood frozen, their earlier arrogance replaced by awe and guilt. The boy clung to Simone instinctively, ignoring his mother, the trust in his tiny grip a silent testament to her skill. The cabin fell into a stunned silence. Even the usual hum of the engine seemed to fade as passengers processed what had just happened. Evelyn's face had drained of color, her perfectly styled hair doing nothing to mask the shock and humiliation in her eyes. Her siblings and children looked equally stunned, some muttering half-formed apologies to no one in particular, their entitlement evaporating under Simone's calm authority. The boy, still clinging to Simone, finally blinked up at his mother, gasping slightly. Evelyn's voice cracked as she said, "Oh, thank you. But the words faltered, swallowed by the weight of the moment. Simone gently set the boy down on his mother's lap, brushing his hair back and making sure he was steady. "He's fine now," she said simply, her voice carrying a quiet authority that left no room for argument. "It's important to stay calm and give space when a child is choking. Your reaction, pushing, panicking, can make things worse." Evelyn's youngest daughter, sitting beside her, peeked out from behind her mother and whispered, "Mom, she saved him. She really did." Around the cabin, passengers were exchanging glances, some nodding in recognition, others murmuring quietly about what had just occurred. The earlier tension, fueled by entitlement and assumptions, had evaporated, replaced with awe and respect for the woman who had just saved a child's life. Evelyn swallowed hard, her lips pressed tightly together. She opened her mouth again, perhaps to apologize, but no words came. Simone's gaze swept briefly across the family, calm but unwavering, before returning to her daughter Amara, who had been watching silently from the window seat. The small girl's eyes shone with admiration, witnessing the power, courage, an authority her mother carried, not through titles, but through action. The flight attendants, who had initially stood frozen and hesitant, now moved more confidently, offering water and checking the passengers for any residual distress. One of them, the senior attendant, finally approached Simone with a quiet nod. "Thank you for handling that, Dr. Harris. I mean, you were amazing." Simone smiled faintly, nodding. "Just doing what I had to. It's what any parent or any doctor would do." The cabin remained quiet, the only sound the gentle whir of the air conditioning. The wealthy family, previously so vocal and dominating, now sat subdued, their earlier laughter and mockery replaced by a heavy awareness of how badly they had misjudged her. Passengers who had been watching exchanged approving nods. Some young children clutched their parents' hands a little tighter, inspired by the courage of a woman who had simply refused to back down in the face of fear and prejudice. Simone leaned back in her seat, adjusting Amara's blanket and letting a quiet sigh escape. The confrontation had been intense, but she had turned the moment into a lesson, not just for the entitled family, but for everyone in the cabin witnessing the truth. Courage, skill, and composure transcend race, class, and assumptions. Evelyn finally muttered something under her breath to no one in particular, perhaps an apology, perhaps just an acknowledgement. I see now." Simone didn't respond. There was no need. The lesson had been delivered. The life had been saved, and the truth had spoken for itself. The cabin remained still for a heartbeat after Simone set the boy safely in his mother's lap. Then slowly it began. Applause. At first tentative, a single clap from a young man near the window. Then another and another, growing louder as passengers realized what had just happened. The hesitant smiles of strangers turned into genuine admiration. A ripple of approval swept through the first-class cabin, breaking the tension like a wave. Amara's eyes widened as she watched, her small hands clapping instinctively. "Mom, they're clapping for you," she whispered, her voice a mixture of awe and pride. Simone's gaze softened, a small smile tugging at the corners of her lips. She crouched slightly to meet her daughter's eyes. "They're clapping because sometimes people forget what really matters," she said quietly. "Courage, calm, compassion. Always do what's right, even when it's hard." Evelyn's family, who had moments ago been hurling insults, now sat frozen, their faces painted with embarrassment and disbelief. Her siblings' mouths opened and closed, muttered apologies caught in the tension. Evelyn herself sat rigid, staring at Simone with a mixture of shock and grudging respect. I didn't, we didn't, thank you," she stammered, her voice barely audible over the renewed applause. Passengers who had been watching the entire ordeal nodded, murmuring their approval. A businesswoman across the aisle whispered to her husband, "She saved that little boy, and with such grace." Children pressed closer to their parents, wide-eyed, silently absorbing the scene. Amara, still clapping, leaned against Simone's arm. "I want to be like you, Mom," she said softly, her voice filled with awe. "I want to be brave and smart like you." Simone ruffled her daughter's hair gently. "You already are, baby," she said, "and you will be every day. Just remember, strength isn't about being loud. It's about knowing what's right and standing firm when it matters most." The flight attendants, who had initially hesitated, now gave subtle nods of respect, some offering discreet smiles of approval. Even a few passengers who hadn't been involved in the earlier confrontation applauded quietly, acknowledging the lesson they had all just witnessed. Evelyn's youngest, still in her mother's lap, clutched his stuffed animal tightly, his eyes wide and innocent. He had no idea of the social tension that had preceded his near tragedy, only that a calm, capable woman had saved him. Evelyn's expression softened slightly as she finally lifted her eyes to Simone. No words came, but the acknowledgement was there, an unspoken recognition of skill, courage, and humanity. Simone adjusted Amara in her seat, her fingers brushing over the little girl's curls. "Sometimes people don't see the truth right away," she murmured, "but that's okay. Actions speak louder than words." The applause gradually subsided, replaced by a quiet hum of conversation. But the atmosphere had irrevocably shifted. The entitled assumptions, the mockery, they were gone. In their place was a cabin full of witnesses who had seen courage in action, who had watched a mother protect, teach, and lead without hesitation. Amara's small hand found Simone's. "I'm proud of you, Mom," she said again, her voice stronger this time. "Really proud." Simone smiled fully now, a mixture of relief and pride washing over her. "And I'm proud of you too, baby," she replied. "Always remember what you're capable of." The rest of the flight passed with a lighter atmosphere. Passengers whispered quietly among themselves, sharing stories of what they had witnessed. The wealthy family remained subdued, their earlier arrogance replaced with silence and reflection. Simone, meanwhile, stayed calm, caring for Amara and preparing for their arrival. Her presence a quiet reminder that dignity, skill, and courage always leave an imprint. By the time the plane began its descent, the applause had become a memory, but its impact lingered. Simone adjusted Amara's seatbelt one last time, her eyes scanning the cabin, noting the subtle nods, the quiet smiles, the acknowledgement of a life lived with purpose. When the plane finally touched down, the first-class passengers offered polite smiles and nods as they disembarked. Some offered brief, whispered words of thanks. Others simply stared, reflecting on the extraordinary demonstration of composure and skill they had just witnessed. And as Simone lifted Amara from her seat, the little girl's eyes sparkled. "That was amazing, Mom," she said softly, still absorbing the enormity of the moment. Simone smiled, holding her daughter close. "Every day is amazing when you do what's right," she replied. "Now, let's go home." The plane touched down smoothly, and the cabin slowly began to stir as passengers prepared to disembark. Simone held Amara's hand, guiding her carefully through the aisle. But this time, the tension from earlier had shifted. It had been replaced by quiet admiration. One by one, passengers approached her. A businessman she had noticed earlier extended his hand. "Ma'am, I just wanted to say, that was incredible. You saved that boy and the way you handled them. It was inspiring." A young mother, still clutching her infant, nodded eagerly. "I hope my daughter grows up to have your courage and composure." From a few rows back, the young girl who had watched everything during the confrontation whispered to her mother again, "I want to be just like her." Her mother smiled, giving Simone an approving nod as she passed. Amara tugged at Simone's hand. "Mom, look! Everyone's saying good things about you." Simone smiled, bending to ruffle her daughter's hair. "Yes, baby. Today was about helping people and showing that standing tall matters more than what anyone else thinks." As they neared the terminal exit, the pilot approached, extending a hand with a warm smile. "Dr. Harris, Simone, right? Incredible work back there. You kept your head while everyone else panicked. I wanted to personally thank you. The crew told me what happened." Simone shook his hand, her calm composure intact. "Thank you, Captain. I just did what needed to be done." Evelyn and her husband approached, faces subdued, stripped of the earlier entitlement. Evelyn's voice trembled slightly. "Dr. Harris, I realize how wrong we were. I'm so sorry for what we said, how we treated you. You didn't deserve any of it." Her sister stepped forward, voice soft. "I should have said something when they started. I was wrong to stay silent. Please forgive us." Evelyn's children, looking ashamed, whispered apologies as well. One of the sisters held her hands together. "We misjudged you entirely. You are incredible, and we're ashamed of how we acted." Finally, Evelyn's husband spoke, his tone measured, remorseful. "Dr. Harris, I, personally, was completely out of line. I can't undo what we said or how we acted, but please know I deeply respect you now. If there's any way to make amends, any gesture we can do, we want to." Simone's gaze softened slightly but remained steady. "All that matters is that your son is safe. Focus on that and on being better next time." He nodded, swallowing hard, then reached into his pocket. "I know it won't change what we did, but we would like to take a photo with you to remember the woman who saved our child and showed such grace, even after everything. Simone paused for a heartbeat, then nodded. All right. The family clustered around her, Amara standing proudly by her side. Evelyn and her husband stood closest, their expressions sincere, humbled by the weight of their previous arrogance. One by one, each family member offered quiet apologies directly to Simone, their voices carrying genuine respect. The husband finally added, hesitating slightly, "We'd also like to make a contribution, something meaningful, to honor the incredible work you do. Consider it a small token of gratitude for what you've done today, for our son, and for how you carry yourself in the face of everything." Simone's lips curved into a small, knowing smile. Thank you. That's thoughtful. But today, just seeing him safe, that's more than enough. The camera clicked, capturing the moment, a stark contrast of courage, compassion, and dignity standing tall against prejudice. Even Evelyn's sisters and children squeezed into the frame, humbled, realizing the weight of their earlier actions. As the photo was taken, a quiet sense of closure settled over the cabin. This wasn't just a picture, it was a testament, a reminder that actions define character far more than words, entitlement, or prejudice ever could. Amara beamed, squeezing her mother's hand. That's my mom, she said proudly. Simone walked out of the plane holding Amara's hand, her posture calm and unshaken, the admiration and respect of passengers and the family alike following her every step. She had endured humiliation, faced entitlement head-on, and emerged with her integrity intact, a living example of strength, grace, and maternal courage. Simone squeezed her daughter's hand and said, "Remember this, baby. No one can define your worth except you. Stand tall, speak up, and always do what's right, even when it's hard." The story of courage, humility, and resilience didn't end on the plane. It continued in the hearts of everyone who had witnessed it. And now, it's your turn to carry the lesson forward. If Simone's strength inspired you today, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more stories of courage and triumph. Hit the like button, share this video, and remember, standing up for what's right always makes a difference.